Code of Hammurabi, circa 1754 BCE, one of the earliest legal codes establishing social justice principles. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest and most complete written legal codes, was established around 1754 BCE by King Hammurabi of Babylon, a powerful ruler in ancient Mesopotamia. This set of laws, etched on a large stone stele, was intended to bring order to society and uphold justice by establishing a clear set of rules and consequences. It is often regarded as a significant milestone in the development of law and governance in human history. Introduction to the Code. The Code opens with a prologue in which King Hammurabi introduces his role as the divine representative of justice. He states that he was chosen by the gods to bring law and order to the people of Babylon, protect the weak from the strong, and ensure fairness across society. Hammurabi portrays himself as a benevolent ruler who has established the code to bring harmony and justice to his kingdom. Anu and Bel, the great gods, call me by name Hammurabi, the exalted prince, who fears God, to bring about the rule of righteousness in the land, to destroy the wicked and the evil doers, so that the strong should not harm the weak. Structure and content of the code. The Code of Hammurabi consists of 282 laws carved into a stone stele. These laws cover a wide range of topics, from family law and criminal justice to commercial transactions and property rights. The code is often noted for its use of lex talionis, the principle of an eye for an eye, meaning that punishment should be proportionate to the offense committed. However, the severity of punishments often depended on the social class of the individuals involved. 1. Family law. The code outlines several laws regarding marriage, divorce, inheritance, and familial relationships. The relationship between husband and wife was considered a key aspect of social order. For example, a law stated that if a man divorces his wife, he must pay her a sum of money as compensation for the loss of her support. Conversely, if a wife is caught committing adultery, she could be sentenced to death, reflecting the strict moral expectations placed upon women. 2. Criminal justice. Many laws in the code deal with crimes such as theft, assault, and murder. Some of the most famous laws in the Code of Hammurabi are those addressing punishment for these offenses. The principle of lex talionis is evident in these laws, where punishment often mirrored the crime. If a man steals an ox, he must repay it with 5 oxen. If a person kills another, the perpetrator is to be executed. If a house collapses and kills its owner, the builder is to be put to death. However, the code also provided for different levels of punishment depending on social status. For instance, if a nobleman's son struck a commoner, the nobleman's son would be punished more severely than if the roles were reversed. 3. Commercial and property law. The Code of Hammurabi includes a significant number of laws related to commerce, contracts, and property rights. These laws were designed to ensure fairness and maintain economic stability within the kingdom. Some examples of commercial laws include: if a merchant lends grain to a farmer and the farmer is unable to repay, the merchant has a right to seize the farmer's property, but only under certain conditions. Contracts and agreements must be written down, and witnesses are required to verify the transaction. This reflects the early development of contract law. Laws surrounding the sale of slaves and the responsibility of buyers and sellers of property also feature prominently. 4. Labor laws. Several laws in the code relate to workers' rights, particularly those involved in building or construction. These laws govern compensation for labor and the responsibilities of both employers and workers. If a worker was injured while building a structure, the employer was often held accountable for the worker's medical care and compensation. 5. Social justice and protection of the weak. One of the most significant aspects of the Code of Hammurabi was its effort to protect the weak and vulnerable in society, such as widows, orphans, and the poor. Hammurabi's prologue emphasizes that the code is meant to protect those who cannot protect themselves. For example, if a widow is wrongfully denied her inheritance, she is entitled to legal protection. Laws protecting the poor from exploitation by the rich are also included. For instance, moneylenders cannot charge exorbitant interest rates to the poor. Some laws also protect slaves, ensuring that they cannot be mistreated without consequence. 6. Punishment and justice. The punishment for breaking the law under the Code of Hammurabi ranged from fines and compensation to corporal punishment and even death, depending on the severity of the crime. As mentioned earlier, the principle of lex talionis guided many of these laws, though there were exceptions. For example, the punishment for a crime might differ based on the social rank of the person committing the crime or the victim. The code provided clear and structured consequences for offenses, thus establishing a framework for justice. Legacy of the Code. Code of Hammurabi, circa 1754 BCE. One of the earliest legal codes establishing social justice principles. The Code of Hammurabi had a profound influence on the development of legal systems in the ancient world. It is one of the earliest examples of a state-sponsored legal system that aimed to regulate social and commercial life. While the specific laws of the code are not directly applied today, its principles of fairness, proportionality in punishment, and protection of the weak laid the groundwork for modern legal systems. King Hammurabi's assertion that laws should be publicly known and enforced marked a significant evolution from earlier, more arbitrary forms of justice. The code's emphasis on written law also helped in the development of written legal traditions in other ancient civilizations. The Code of Hammurabi remains one of the most important historical artifacts, offering invaluable insight into Babylonian society and its approach to governance, justice, and social order. It provides a window into the ancient world's understanding of law and order, reflecting values and concerns that remain relevant even today. The stele upon which the Code of Hammurabi was inscribed still stands as a monumental symbol of the idea that law should be known and accessible to all, a concept that has become fundamental to legal systems throughout history. Confucianism emerges. 6th century BCE, a major philosophy shaping Chinese society. Introduction. In the 6th century BCE, during a period of social and political turmoil in ancient China, a philosophy emerged that would shape Chinese civilization for over 2 millennia. This philosophy, known as Confucianism, was founded by Confucius, Confuzi, 551 to 479 BCE, a scholar, teacher, and political thinker. Confucianism was not a religion in the traditional sense, but a system of ethical, moral, and social teachings that emphasize harmony, proper conduct, and the cultivation of virtuous character. Confucius lived during the late Zhou dynasty, an era marked by constant warfare among feudal states and the decline of centralized authority. Witnessing the moral decay of society and the chaos of his time, he sought to restore order through the revival of ethical values, strong leadership, and a well-structured society. His ideas, later compiled by his followers into a text known as the Analects Luenyu, became the foundation of Confucianism. Core teachings of Confucianism. Confucianism is centered around key principles that define human relationships, governance, and personal development. These principles provided a blueprint for social harmony and ethical behavior, influencing Chinese society, government, and culture for centuries. 1. The 5 constant virtues, Wuchang. Confucius taught that a good society is built upon 5 fundamental virtues. Run. Benevolence and humanity. The highest virtue, wherein represents kindness, compassion, and empathy toward others. It is the moral foundation for all human interactions. E. Righteousness and justice. The commitment to doing what is right, even at personal cost. It emphasizes integrity and moral duty. Li. Rituals and proper conduct. A set of social norms governing behavior, etiquette, and tradition. Observing Li maintains harmony in relationships. Ji. Wisdom and knowledge. The ability to discern right from wrong and make sound decisions based on moral reasoning. Xin. Integrity and trustworthiness. Faithfulness in one's words and actions, ensuring honesty in relationships and governance. 2. Filial piety, Shao, and the 5 key relationships. Confucius placed great emphasis on filial piety, Shao, the respect and devotion children owe to their parents and ancestors. This concept extended beyond the family and became a model for respect within society. Confucius identified 5 fundamental relationships, Wu Luan, that govern social structure and moral duty. 1. Ruler and subject. The ruler should be just and benevolent, while the subject should be loyal and obedient. 2. Father and son. The father provides guidance and care, and the son respects and obeys. 3. Husband and wife. The husband should be responsible and protective, and the wife should be supportive and faithful. 4. Older brother and younger brother. The elder sibling acts as a role model, while the younger sibling shows respect. 5. Friend and friend. Friendship should be based on mutual trust and sincerity. These hierarchical relationships reinforced a well-ordered society in which every individual had defined roles and responsibilities. 3. The role of education and self-cultivation. Confucius believed that moral character was not inherited but developed through education, shui, and self-cultivation. He emphasized that true wisdom comes from lifelong learning and that individuals should strive for self-improvement through study, reflection, and practice. Education was seen as a tool not just for personal advancement, but for the betterment of society. Confucius advocated for a merit-based system in which government positions were earned through knowledge and virtue rather than birthright. This idea later influenced the development of China's civil service examination system. 4. The concept of the junzi, the ideal gentleman. Confucius introduced the concept of the junzi, or gentleman, as the ideal human being who embodies moral excellence, integrity, and wisdom. The junzi leads by example, promoting harmony and justice in both personal and public life. In contrast, the shaoran, or petty person, acts selfishly, without regard for virtue or the greater good. Confucianism's influence on Chinese society. 1. Confucianism in government and politics. One of Confucius's greatest aspirations was to guide rulers toward moral leadership. He argued that a just ruler leads not by force, but by virtue. The ruler should be a model of ethical behavior, and his subjects would naturally follow his example. This idea, known as rule by virtue, daji, stood in contrast to legalist philosophies that relied on harsh laws and punishments. During the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE, 220 CE, Emperor Wu officially adopted Confucianism as a state ideology, establishing Confucian teachings as a foundation of Chinese governance. The government implemented the civil service examination system, which required officials to study Confucian texts and pass rigorous exams to attain positions of power. This system ensured that the most knowledgeable and morally upright individuals governed the empire, solidifying Confucianism's role in Chinese politics for centuries. 2. Confucianism and social order. Confucianism reinforced traditional values, such as respect for authority, family loyalty, and social harmony. It became deeply embedded in daily life, influencing everything from family structures to business practices. Confucian teachings encouraged people to prioritize the well-being of the community over individual desires, fostering a sense of duty and collective responsibility. 3. Confucianism and education. Confucianism elevated the importance of scholarship and intellectual development. Throughout Chinese history, education was regarded as the primary means of achieving personal growth and societal progress. Confucian schools and academies spread across China, and Confucian texts became central to the curriculum. 4. Confucianism's role in East Asia. Confucianism's influence extended beyond China, shaping the cultures of Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Each of these nations integrated Confucian values into their political systems, education, and social structures. For example, in Korea, Confucianism became the dominant ideology during the Joseon Dynasty, 1392 to 1897. In Japan, Confucian principles influenced the samurai code, Bushido, and government policies. In Vietnam, Confucianism was embraced as a guiding philosophy in governance and education. The evolution of Confucianism. Over time, Confucianism evolved into different schools of thought, including Neo-Confucianism, which emerged during the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279 CE. Thinkers like Zhu Xi expanded Confucian philosophy by integrating Buddhist and Taoist elements, further enriching its intellectual tradition. In the modern era, Confucianism continues to influence Chinese culture, education, and ethics. While it faced challenges during the 20th century, particularly during the Communist Revolution, it has experienced a resurgence as China re-examines its cultural heritage. Confucianism's enduring legacy. Confucianism, emerging in the 6th century BCE, has left an indelible mark on Chinese civilization and beyond. By advocating for virtue, education, and respect for social order, it provided a framework for ethical governance and personal conduct. Its teachings continue to shape Chinese society, inspiring discussions on morality, leadership, and the role of tradition in an ever-changing world. Abolition of slavery in Athens, 6th century BCE, reforms under Solon that improved social quality. Introduction: Athens in 6th century BCE. In the early 6th century BCE, Athens was a city on the brink of crisis. Economic disparity had created deep social divisions, and many Athenians found themselves trapped in a cycle of debt and servitude. The aristocratic elite who controlled land and political power dominated the poorer classes, many of whom were forced into debt slavery, also known as debt bondage or debt peonage. Those who could not repay their loans often lost their land and were enslaved, either within Athens or sold abroad. The discontent among the lower classes threatened to destabilize the city-state. In response, the Athenian statesman Solon was appointed archon chief magistrate in 594 BC with the task of enacting reforms that would restore social balance and prevent civil strife. One of his most significant measures was the abolition of debt slavery, an early step toward greater social equality in Athens. The reforms of Solon introduced a series of economic, political, and social reforms aimed at addressing the grievances of the common people while maintaining stability. His most impactful reform concerning social equality was Sisakthia, sigma epsilon iota sigma chi epsilon iota alpha, or the shaking off of burdens. This law abolished debt slavery, freed those who had already been enslaved due to unpaid debts, and prevented future enslavement for debt-related reasons. 1. The abolition of debt slavery. Before Solon's reforms, many Athenians, especially small farmers, had borrowed money from wealthy landowners by pledging their land and personal freedom as collateral. If they could not repay their debts, they were forced to surrender their land and, in many cases, sell themselves or their family members into slavery. Solon's Sisakthia declared, all outstanding debts that could lead to enslavement were canceled. Athenians who had already been enslaved due to debt were freed. Land that had been seized due to unpaid debts was returned to its original owners. The practice of using one's own body as collateral for a loan was permanently banned. This reform was revolutionary because it liberated citizens from economic oppression and ensured that Athenians could no longer be reduced to slaves due to financial hardship. 2. Land and economic reforms. Solon understood that simply canceling debts was not enough. He needed to create economic conditions that prevented future crises. To achieve this, he redistributed land to make ownership more balanced. Though he did not implement a radical redistribution, he ensured that poorer citizens were not entirely deprived of land. Encouraged agricultural production by promoting the cultivation of olive trees, a profitable crop for trade. Introduced new weights and measures to standardize commerce, making Athens more competitive in trade. Allowed skilled foreign artisans to settle in Athens to stimulate economic growth and expand industries. These measures helped create a more sustainable economy, reducing the likelihood of Athenians falling into debt slavery again. 3. Political reforms and social equality. Solon's vision extended beyond economics. He also restructured the political system to give more Athenians a say in governance. Before his reforms, political power was concentrated in the hands of the aristocracy, but Solon introduced a new class system based on wealth rather than birth. He divided Athenian society into 4 property-based classes. 1. Penacosio-metamnoi, wealthiest landowners, eligible for the highest offices. 2. Hippias, wealthy citizens who could afford horses for military service. 3. Zeugatai, middle-class farmers, eligible for some government roles. 4. Dates, poor citizens and laborers, who gained the right to participate in the assembly. While Solon did not establish full democracy, he expanded political participation beyond the aristocracy. This shift laid the groundwork for later democratic reforms in Athens. Impact and legacy of Solon's reforms. Solon's abolition of debt slavery was a monumental step towards social justice and reshaped Athenian society in several key ways. Greater social equality. By eliminating debt slavery, Solon protected the lower classes from economic exploitation and gave them more opportunities to participate in society. Strengthened the citizenry. Since only free men could participate in Athenian politics and the military, Solon's reforms increased the number of eligible citizens, strengthening Athens as a city-state. Economic stability. The promotion of agriculture and trade created a more balanced economy, reducing economic dependency on landowners. Foundation for democracy. by giving common citizens a role in governance. Solon paved the way for Athenian democracy, which would be further developed by later leaders like Cleisthenes, 508 BCE, and Pericles, 5th century BCE. Challenges and criticism. While Solon's reforms were groundbreaking, they were not without controversy. The aristocracy resisted. Wealthy landowners were unhappy about losing their financial hold over the lower classes. The poor wanted more. Some lower-class citizens hoped for a complete redistribution of land, which Solon refused to implement. Political unrest continued. Despite Solon's efforts, Athens still experienced internal conflicts, leading to the rise of a tyrant Pisistratos c. 561 BCE, who capitalized on lingering inequalities. Despite these challenges, Solon's policies remained a cornerstone of Athenian governance, and his commitment to justice earned him lasting respect. The lasting significance of Solon's abolition of debt slavery. Solon's abolition of debt slavery in 6th century BCE, Athens, was one of the first recorded efforts to establish social justice through law. By eliminating practice of enslaving citizens over debts, he set a precedent for protecting individual freedoms and promoting economic fairness. His reforms were not just about debt. They redefined citizenship, reshaped the economy, and laid the foundation for political participation, though Athens would continue to evolve. Solon's vision influenced democratic ideals that would later flourish in classical Greece and beyond. Today, Solon is remembered as a pioneer of reform whose policy set Athens on a path toward democracy, social equity, and economic prosperity. His belief that laws should serve all citizens, not just the elite, remains a powerful lesson in governance and justice.